Hi, I'm Greg Jameson with Web Stores Limited.
And I'm David Natalizia with Newent Consulting.
And we're going to just talk today a little bit about some of the ideas that David has. I heard him give a speech recently about 5 key components to making your business better. And as someone that does e-commerce websites, it got me thinking about how to apply that to an online business as well. So maybe, David, you can just go ahead and start out and tell us what those components are, and we can talk about each of them.
Sure. I do a lot of work with hotels and restaurants, and a lot of that involves a service model, something that I call a premium service model, with the idea being if you've got customers, if you're facing the public, you've got to come up with a way to deliver your service in a structured fashion that's going to deliver not just the product, but an experience to your customer. And some of the discussion that we had and some of what came out of my aftermath of that talk was the idea that these points of service really do apply in an online context the same way they would apply if you've got a brick and mortar business.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that you started out talking about was safety, which I know is a big thing in your business in general. And I was kind of struggling with that at first, but then I was like, okay, there is in fact some things as it relates to safety online, specifically in terms of like credit card fraud and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the idea. So let me take just a minute and go through the 5 points of what I call the premium service model, and then maybe we can talk about each one individually. So in a nutshell, here are 5 points. The first one is the idea of safety. And Greg just mentioned one dimension of it, but the idea that someone's well-being, someone's sense of security, someone's sense of still being in one piece, literally or figuratively when they're done with their experience, those are all things that relate to safety. And it doesn't take much to think about how that if you feel unsafe, if you feel that something of yours might be compromised, you're not going to want to go any further. And really that's something we could talk more about as the distinctions between the online and the offline world, but safety is the first one. Second one is helpfulness. Helpfulness is something that on one hand is self-evident, but on the other hand there's a dimension of helpfulness that people often miss. And that's the idea that you want to be courteous, you want to be pleasant, you want to have a nice disposition, but it doesn't matter if you do that if you're not ready to help someone find out what their needs are, meet their needs, and do it quickly. So helpfulness is an oft overlooked dimension. That's number 2. And by the way, these are in priority order in this service model. The third one is presentation. And presentation has to do not just with the way that something looks, so how pretty, and picture a store with nice decor, nice paint, nice lighting. That's part of it. Merchandising is part of it, how the products are presented, how the labels face, what's at eye level. But it goes further than that. Your voicemail, if you've got people working in a brick and mortar facility, the idea about how someone dresses, how they're groomed. Those are all things that get into the presentation side. And the thing I'll mention, we can get into this further in the online world, I've been to some large retailer sites where they have a beautifully designed primary site, and then you go into either their subscription or their shopping cart or some other dimension, and somehow it falls apart. To me, that's a presentation fail on their part. It doesn't look and feel as nice as when they were trying to sell me the product. After that comes flexibility. Flexibility is the idea that you can have a good model for how you're going to operate, but you really have to be able to deal both with changing things on the part of your customers, meaning someone with different needs or a different point of view or coming from a different place, or the other side, a busy time of year, a problem with one of your suppliers, something that's not available. How do you deal with issues in delivering what you have to deliver or in the circumstances that surround it? How can you be flexible to do the best with the situation as it's presented? And then the last one is effectiveness. Effectiveness really takes a cue from the works of Peter Drucker, who talks about effectiveness versus efficiency. And the idea there is that efficiency is terrific in the sense of don't have any wasted energy, make sure that you do things as quickly as possible, reduce waste, put all your resources toward it, what it is you're trying to accomplish. Effectiveness takes that same idea and it combines it with ensuring that you're setting the right targets and doing the right things. And that's one of the things we have to be careful about, which is efficiently doing the wrong things, or having something that's beautiful or really whiz-bang but doesn't serve anyone's needs. So those are the 5, and just once again, safety, helpfulness, presentation, flexibility, and effectiveness.
Okay, let's actually take a minute and let's go through each of those and see how they would apply to an e-commerce website. Because obviously those things are incredibly important in the offline world, as you said, in a brick and mortar situation. And I think that they're actually all pretty relevant in an online situation too, and people need to figure out how they can apply that to their online store. So we mentioned safety, and certainly as it relates to, do they feel safe when they're putting in their credit card information? As it turns out, there's a whole industry about online fraud, basically, whether it be credit cards or people stealing personal information, emails and so forth as well. Can you think of anything else as it relates to that?
Yeah, well, the thing that I'd want to mention is that having a professional appearance is really the starting point. Is that honestly, if you have, and we're talking about online presence here in particular, if you have something where that someone sees an immediately missing graphic or broken link or something that looks wrong to begin with, it doesn't matter what sort of technical security measures you have later. People are going to be less confident in doing business with you. And the thing that I'll mention even further is that you've got to back that up. Is that look at the giant retailers like Target that have had breaches in the last year, and you think, well, there was a time when somebody said, well, they're large and polished, but then you also have to make sure that you give people whatever sort of assurances they need, that you can back up to say your information is secure, it's verified in this means, or whatever sort of fashion you're going to do. So I would say you have to proactively push that stuff out, even to the point, I've seen sites that actually mention how your data is handled, meaning this data will not be stored, this data will not be shared ever, under whatever the idea is, just to make sure that you've removed that question that might be on somebody's mind.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that a lot of sites do is they put these seals on their site saying that, we've been looked at by McAfee or somebody to say that we're secure. And it's interesting to me that a lot of times people will come to me, and I tend to work with smaller businesses. I don't have Target as a client, and they're like, I want to make sure that my site is secure. And the reality is everything in the world is hackable. I mean, yeah, Target got hacked, Home Depot got hacked, the US government gets hacked. In fact, in some ways, the larger you get, the more likely you are to get hacked than the smaller people. But having those security seals on your site saying that, yes, we use SSL, we have our site scanned by a third-party service and so forth, I think that does help the consumer a little bit, saying, okay, I'm willing to enter in my credit card information on this site.
And I guess the last thing I'll mention about the safety portion, in terms of an online presence, is that I think this is one where that your reputation is one that means more than anything else. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you used a third-party shopping cart provider, and I don't know the names of the prominent ones, but let's just say you were using PayPal to collect money, because I know PayPal does everything related to collecting money, so that's a possibility.
Absolutely.
If you associated yourself with that, and then there was a headline-grabbing breach, then later on people are going to be concerned that, oh, you're using this site that has an issue. Now, I know that companies like PayPal probably spend loads of energy trying to make sure that thing doesn't happen, but think about it the other way, that if you do the true behind-the-scenes things necessary to maintain a reasonable level of security, then you're less likely to have somebody have a bad experience, because that's really the issue here. The issue here is that people might not even care about it. They might look at those seals on your website and just breeze right past them. But once someone hears that there was a problem, that you were part of something that was compromised, then they might think twice. So I guess the thing I'd say on this one is, this isn't one so much where that it's a message you have to put out there. You have to take care of that part of your offering and be confident that you're doing the right thing so that you don't have those issues. The way you advertise it, or the way that you present it on the site, is probably secondary. This is one where it's really going to be a behind-the-scenes thing that say, hey, do you feel good about it? And take a look. Look backwards at things that have happened in the news, and you say, how is what I'm doing protected from the sort of things that happen in this group or that group?
Reputation is obviously huge. Obviously, we had the situation a number of years ago with Tylenol and people dying as a result of taking Tylenol. And Tylenol owned up to the fact and fixed the problem, and as a result, people still take Tylenol today. It's not something that disappeared because they did have a good reputation and they managed that reputation. So managing your online reputation is huge.
Oh, definitely. And any time, I know anyone with any sort of volume of business, there are things that come up that might not be at the level of a breach, but somebody, has some sort of issue, something maybe they didn't authorize, anything like that. Whatever you can do, and the Tylenol is a good example of being very proactive. When something goes on, to say, we're going to get to the bottom of this, we're going to deal with it, to reach out to your customers, offer them something immediately. And that's one of the other things I'd want to remind people in the safety and risk realm, is that there are plenty of things you can do for someone without admitting that you're liable for some larger level of responsibility. And you could start off by just some courtesy notions of saying it. I think about some of the companies that said, well, hey, we're gonna offer you this extra service. We're gonna do these things for you. And whether it's things related to someone's credit card or otherwise, I think just being really responsive is definitely the way to go on that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I agree.